In Virginia, the high school astronomy club has met at night to look at the stars with their telescopes. Leo Biederman is confused because he notices something in the sky that he can't identify, so his teacher asks him to take a picture to send to a professional astronomer. The pictures reach an observatory in Arizona, where Dr. Wolf uses his huge telescope to double-check the information. To his shock, he discovers a comet that will crash on Earth. He immediately tries to email this information, but the server is down. Instead, he puts the information in a floppy disk, naming the comet Wolf Biederman. Then Wolf drives down the mountain while still trying to call his superiors on his cell phone, but he keeps getting sent to voicemail. At the same time, a truck is coming from the opposite side and the driver is distracted when he accidentally drops a cigarette on his lap. Since Wolf is also distracted by his phone, they don't see each other and their vehicles crash. Wolf's car falls off the mountain and catches on fire. A year later in Washington, D.C., news researcher Jenny begs her boss to let her become an anchor, but her boss refuses as always. Instead, she tells her to research the sudden resignation of the Secretary of the Treasury. During lunch, Jenny meets with her mother Robin, who reveals that her ex-husband Jason has gotten married to a new woman and they have twins together. Later, Jenny meets with the secretary's assistant and learns that he quit after talking to the president about Ellie, who the assistant guesses was a mistress. Jenny manages to track the secretary down and finds him leaving with his family on a boat full of supplies. The man freezes when Jenny mentions Ellie and asks her for some compassion if she releases the story, explaining he only quit to be with his family. On her way back, Jenny's car is surrounded by black vehicles that hit hers until she pulls over. It turns out it's the Secret Service, who dragged Jenny into their own car to take her to a restaurant. Jenny is surprised to find President Beck waiting for her, and his pronunciation makes her realize the secret is not the name Ellie but the initials ELE. Beck explains he'll talk about the subject in 2 days during a press conference and asks her not to say anything until then, promising to give her the first question as a reward. When she returns to the office, Jenny searches the term ELE on the internet and is taken to a paleontology website. It turns out ELE stands for extinction-level event, and it refers to the comet that killed the dinosaurs. That night, Jenny meets with her father Jason and his new wife. They're sad that she didn't attend their wedding and even gift Jenny some fancy earrings, but Jenny can't stop thinking about the incoming tragedy. After drinking a lot, she tells her dad to get back together with Robin and leaves. On the day of the conference, Jenny's boss is in the last row while Jenny herself gets the second. President Beck tells everyone about the Wolf-Biederman comet, which is bigger than Mount Everest and will strike Earth in 1 year. The USA has teamed up with Russia to build a spaceship named Messiah that will intercept the comet and blow it up. Beck also introduces everyone to the Messiah crew, who appears on a video conference to explain how they'll land the ship on the comet to plant the warheads. The president asks everyone to continue life as normal and not to do any hoarding, so he'll be freezing all wages and prices. As promised, Beck chooses Jenny first for questions, so she takes a risk and asks 3, bringing up the subject of the secretary's resignation. Beck has no choice but to admit human survival is at stake, but he believes there's no reason to panic because they'll win this fight. Another reporter asks about the discovery, so Beck explains that the scientists who found the comet were killed in a car crash. At home, Leo's family hears the name and wonders if it's about them. Soon all the neighbors are showing up at their house to ask questions. A few days later, Leo is on every newspaper and magazine. He gives a conference at his school sharing what really happened, and all the kids think he's cool now. Meanwhile, the Messiah crew has a party to share a happy day with their families before dedicating themselves to training 24/7. That night they go to a bar and they discuss the risks of the mission. Because of the comet's rotational period, the crew only has a 7-hour window to land on the comet before the sun rises. They'll need to work fast because if the comet is reached by sunlight, there'll be dangerous gas eruptions. 2 months later, the crew finally leaves Earth on a space shuttle that will take them to the station where the Messiah was built. All news outlets cover the launch and explain that Messiah was originally a project called Orion that the Russians developed for nuclear warfare. It's powered by a prototype nuclear propulsion system which will allow the crew to reach the comet before it gets too close to Earth. The crew is transferred from the shuttle to the Messiah successfully, and now they have a long journey ahead of them to find the comet. 5 months later, reporters all over the world get ready to cover the Messiah's landing, and Jenny is shocked to learn she's finally getting to be an anchor since she was the one who broke the story. Meanwhile, the crew finally gets to see the comet and are amazed by its size. They start getting the warheads ready, carefully moving them around in 0G. On Earth, Jenny explains to the viewers that the Messiah will have to fly through the comet's tail, which is full of rocks, sand, and ice. Soon the Messiah starts flying through the tail and the pilots do their best to avoid all the potential hazards. However, there are too many rocks and they're all huge, so the ship is still hit a couple of times. Thankfully, the damage is minimal and the Messiah safely lands on the comet. Now the crew has 6 hours and 18 minutes to finish the mission before sunrise. The astronauts come out with a special machine that immediately starts drilling. For the few first hours, things go well, but eventually the drill gets stuck. The hole they've made so far isn't deep enough for the warheads to do any real damage, so someone will have to go down and free the drill to finish the mission. With only 20 minutes left, the pilots on the ship realize the crew is taking too long and they won't have time to come back. They decide to fly closer to rescue them, although this means they may not have enough fuel later to go back to Earth. Commander Monash goes down the hole and discovers it opens up into a cave, which caused the drill to get hammed against the side. After lots of pulling and even jumping on it, Monash manages to free the drill up and starts climbing out as fast as possible. The pilots arrive with the ship but must stop flying to save fuel, so they land at a running distance behind the crew. Unfortunately, they run out of time and the sun comes out. Little by little, the comet is reached by light, so the astronauts cover their visors with solar shields. A gas eruption shoots Monash out of the hole before he can finish climbing and doesn't give him time to cover his visor, so his face gets burned. The crew manages to catch him by his tether cable and reel him in before they start running toward the ship. Gas keeps blasting from the ground above them and unfortunately hits the medical officer, who is set flying into open space. The rest of the crew get to the Messiah just in time and the ship flies away before the temperature gets worse. Some astronauts wish to rescue the doctor, but they don't have the fuel or the time to do so. Monash's face is in a terrible state and he can't see, so now Captain Tanner is in charge. Earth receives an update on the mission. The crew has planted the warheads but lost a man in the process. Jenny reads a few words to honor the doctor's memory. Once the Messiah is at a safe distance, the crew detonates the warheads. The shockwave caused by the explosion reaches the ship, making it shake like crazy and interrupting its transmission to Earth. The astronauts rush to minimize the damage and stop any possible fire before it even begins, helping the ship stabilize pretty quickly. The crew discusses what to do now, and considering the damage on the ship, they agree to go home. Moments later, President Beck receives bad news and has to share them with the country as carefully as possible. It turns out the warhead detonation only succeeded in breaking the comet in half, and the resulting pieces are still big enough to cause catastrophic damage to the planet. Both pieces are heading toward Earth and NASA has lost all contact with the Messiah, so they don't know if the crew is alive. Beck announces that the government has been excavating shelter caverns in the cliffs of Missouri to use as a bunker, which will be able to contain 1 million people plus enough animal and plant life to repopulate the Earth after everything is over. 200,000 people have been already selected, including leaders, doctors, scientists, engineers, teachers, soldiers, and artists. In 1 month, a national lottery will choose the other 800,000 people. The details of the lottery procedure are sent to Jenny, who shares them on her show. The lottery drawing will be in August and pick the winners by their social security numbers. However, people who are over 50 years old can't participate unless they're part of the chosen scientists needed to rebuild. Leo's family soon gets a call telling them they're part of the pre-selected group. With only 4 weeks left before impact, Jenny visits Robin, who won't be part of the lottery. Jenny admits she thinks it's unfair she was pre-selected since she's only a journalist. Meanwhile, Leo proposes to his girlfriend Sarah so she can legally be his family too and come to the bunker. Sarah doesn't want to leave her parents behind, but Leo promises to use his fame to get them in. As days pass, people all over the country panic and looters begin to set abandoned stores on fire. The flames aren't put off because firefighters are busy preparing the shelters. The rest of the world isn't doing well either. The major cities in Latin America have been taken over by looting gangs, and in Moscow, people fight over food and fuel as the shortages continue. 2 weeks before impact, Tanner does some calculations before checking on Monash. His face is free of blisters now, but his eyes are still damaged. The only thing he can occasionally see is flashes of light. Tanner decides to read to him to keep him entertained. When the time comes to evacuate, the National Guard allows Leo to bring his family and Sarah, but not her family even though Leo made the request. Sarah refuses to leave her loved ones and chooses to stay, so she has to watch the bus take Leo away. In the meantime, Jenny is informed Robin has self-deleted. After picking up her possessions from the morgue, she sits under the rain to grieve. Jason comes to pick her up and reveals his wife left him to hide with her family. Jenny tells him she feels like an orphan before leaving alone in a cab. 5 days before impact, the chosen people and rescued animals are arriving at the bunker in the limestone cliffs of Missouri. A crowd is gathered behind the fence asking to be saved too. Leo watches the desperate people who have brought their babies and hears a soldier say they'll be in the bunker for 2 years. Refusing to continue without Sarah, Leo says goodbye to his family and runs away to rescue his wife. At the news station, Jason brings Jenny some childhood pictures and says a final goodbye, leaving her in tears. That night, NASA launches a series of missiles known as Titans to hopefully destroy the comet, and Jenny follows their trajectory on her newscast. 14 hours later, Beck delivers the results. The missiles have failed, so humanity must get ready for impact. The smaller fragment comet has been named Biedermann and will impact in 12 hours near Cape Hatteras in the Atlantic Ocean. This means a tsunami will reach the U.S. eastern coast and destroy very important cities like New York and Philadelphia. The main body of the comet, called Wolf, will land in western Canada several hours later, and this will be the actual extinction-level event. For 2 days after impact, dust and debris will fill the sky and keep it dark for 2 years. Without sunlight, all plant and animal life will die. 10 hours before impact, Tanner finishes his calculations and announces he has a plan. They can do nothing about the Biedermann fragment, but he believes they can stop the main Wolf comet to save humanity. Since the gas eruptions have created a very large fissure that reaches the comet's center, They can put the remaining warheads into that hole and blow the comet up in small fragments. The Messiah doesn't have much fuel left, so they can't land on the comet or leave after they're done. They'll be shooting the ship right into the fissure and dying in the process. It's hard to hear, but the crew agrees they have no other choice. They get in contact with Houston and share their plan to bring people hope. On Earth, Leo hitchhikes his way home, but Sarah and her family are already gone. He remembers Sarah's father has a bike, so he steals it to leave town faster. There's a huge traffic jam blocking every road, but the bike allows Leo to easily move among the cars. He finds Sarah and her parents tell her to leave with her baby brother. The three youngsters get away on the bike while Sarah's parents watch them in tears. At the news station, the journalists draw sticks to choose who will go with Jenny to the bunker. However, she feels guilty because her boss has a daughter. So when the helicopter comes to pick her up, Jenny lets her boss and the child take her place. Afterward, Jenny goes to the beach to find Jason and they reconcile before they agree to wait for the end together. At that moment, people around the world watch the Biedermann fragment coming down in the sky until it hits the Atlantic Ocean. A gigantic explosion happens and the sky turns dark as a huge tsunami forms. Soon the wave covers New York, bringing down thousands of buildings and killing every person who couldn't escape. Jenny and Jason hug on the beach as they are killed too. The Statue of Liberty is destroyed and its head now floats around with the rest of the debris. The water even reaches the roads near the coast, so people leave their cars and try to run away in panic to search for higher ground. Sarah's parents stay, choosing to go out with dignity. Leo, Sarah, and a baby are still racing uphill, but soon they must drop the bike and continue on foot like everyone else. 2 minutes before the second impact, NASA puts the Messiah crew in contact with their families for a final goodbye. Sadly, Monash's wife is stuck in traffic and couldn't make it on time. Tanner's 2 sons are on active naval duty and couldn't be reached either, so Tanner prays to his dead wife saying they'll meet soon. When NASA is about to end the transmission, Monash's wife arrives with her baby and Monash gets his final goodbye as well. Then the countdown begins. The crew says their last words to each other as the Messiah enters the comet's orbit and makes it through the fissure just in time. The warheads are detonated and the comet blows up in millions of tiny fragments. On Earth, Leo and Sarah reach the top of the hill and watch the fragments cover the sky as if they were fireworks. A few days later, after the waters of the Atlantic Ocean finally recede, Beck gives a speech acknowledging all the lives lost in every continent and asking people to remember those losses while they work to rebuild their future. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.